So team, welcome to tonight's training, the power of journaling. And this is a training that I've wanted to deliver to you guys for quite some time now. And I'm hoping this training will just give you a better understanding of the power of journaling essentially, and also the clarity that it can provide. And I'll be sharing what it has done for me as well. The benefits that it can provide are incredibly important, right? And especially if you are a person who gets stuck in your own head a lot. And journaling for me has helped me solve a lot of problems, and it always manages to provide me with solutions and different types of solutions as well. And it can help you become more emotionally balanced. And there's such a simple thing of just really putting pen to paper or your fingers to a keyboard and asking yourself the right type of questions to help you overcome any obstacle that you may be facing. Now, before we get going, I'd just love to hear from you guys if any of you guys journal consistently, and also a little bit about what you hope to get from this training. So if you can just pop that in the chat for me while I just take a sip of water. And guys, it's like not just important when it's not just important to journal when we are going through stressful periods. It's also so good for you to journal when things are going well, and it will help you understand a bit more about the yin and the yang of life, right? And what do I mean by this, you might be thinking, but you can't have the good times without the bad times, right? That's just part and parcel of life. And often it's the bad times is what actually helps us grow the most. But when things are good, it's also important to celebrate this and get your thoughts down somewhere. And I'll cover this in more detail throughout this training. So Susan says, have never done this, so interested to learn some basics. Excellent. You're going to really like this. And I'm going to be starting from scratch as well for some people, like explaining how you go about it. Never journal, but have heard such good things. I think I find it very beneficial. So we'd love to learn more about it. Excellent, Nicole. And Mike says, we are not doing it yet. Okay, you're all open to learning anyway, which is a good thing. So this training is really about building better habits, right, around journaling, a better skill set, knowing what to use it for and when to use it, and essentially use it as a tool to no longer avoid the things you are struggling with most. And it's about using it to help you overcome more and more, help you become more emotionally balanced, and to really understand yourself at a deeper level, and to be able to take yourself out of the equation emotionally and look a little bit more into the facts, the info, the data that you get from the answers that you put down on paper. And this is why the questions we ask ourselves will often be the most important thing when it comes to living a better quality of life. And I think it is something that we often don't have, right? So we try and look for this perfect formula. And it's almost like, what question will I ask myself at the right times to get the right answers? And then sometimes it can feel as if I don't ask myself if I don't ask myself the right question, I won't get the right answer. And this can be quite similar to fucking up your nutrition, right? For the want of a better word. If you've one bad meal and it goes to shit, that's kind of the all or nothing mentality, right? And the more we eliminate this mentality in the different areas of our life, the better. And journaling really should not have any rules, right? There shouldn't be a set number of questions that you need to do or need to focus on. You might only ask yourself one question, and other times you might ask yourself 3, 4, or 5 questions, depending on the day. So it should really be free flowing. Excuse me, guys, I have a little bit of a cough tonight, so just in case I'm coughing in between and you're wondering what's going on. So look, journaling is simply the act of informal writing as a regular practice, okay? Which is something we will touch on first. Now, the definition of informal is just having a relaxed, friendly manner or nature, right? Informal also means denoting the grammatical structures of your vocabulary and just making it suitable for everyday language and conversation rather than too official or formal contexts, which some of you might have experience of if you worked in the corporate world before, right? It has to be very formal. So really, it's just about taking a more relaxed and friendly approach when it comes to journaling, and not just having a really strict routine with it, kind of like flexible dieting, okay? That's where I want to build you to with journaling as well. I want it to be flexible. So you build in these automatic principles to ensure you don't always have to be formal with your nutrition, right, for the rest of your life. Eventually you build up the habits so they become automatic, especially when it comes to times where you can track, when you're traveling, you're going through maybe a period of maintenance, or you just want to try and eat a bit more intuitively. And journaling should be something you don't necessarily need to do every day. No, of course you can do that if that's what you like to do, and you can build up that habit. But for me personally, it works well just once per week, right? At the end of my week when I'm doing my planning. And I tried doing it more often, and I felt more of like a chore for me. And sometimes I might add in an extra day here and there if there's just something that's bothering me and I want to journal about. But I at least do it once a week. And it can easily be forgotten about. So find the balance that actually suits you, right? Maybe it's a few times per week. Maybe that's what you start with. Maybe you taper it back then from there. Another thing is, once you build up this habit, after a while, you will need to put the pen to paper. You won't need to put the pen to paper as much, I should say, because once you have built up the skill of asking yourself better questions, you'll actually be able to use your mind as a journal, which I do quite a bit now, especially when I'm going to sleep. I'll always practice gratitude. Before, I used to always have to write down. I got into the habit of writing down 3 things I was grateful for every day. I'll touch on that later as well about journaling about gratitude, but now I do it every night when I'm in bed, just in my mind. It's something I don't need to journal about. And the question you might be wondering is, what do I journal about? On the days things are probably going great, and you don't really have to do it on these days, right? It could simply be just expressing gratitude, like I mentioned, writing down 3 things you're grateful for. I try and do this every night that I remember. I will try and do this on. It's just I don't write it anymore. The gratitude one is just within my mind. Okay, sometimes I'll do it when I'm doing my longer form journaling at the end of the week when I'm putting pen to paper. I use a Google Doc as well sometimes, so I'm not strict with which way I do it. But being grateful for things is a very easy way to get started. Every day I've done this for a number of months. I just pick 3 random things, and it can be anything at all. Okay, and we'll be getting into that a little bit later. It might be just as simple as well, guys, of like, writing down your goals for the day and then going back to it later and seeing, right, did I achieve this? Just for a little bit more external accountability. And this is why I have the Monday goals card within the group every week. It's an opportunity for you guys to write them down somewhere. Because when you write them down somewhere, whether that be in the group card or you're just putting pen to paper, the likelihood of you actually achieving these goals actually increases massively. And it doesn't have to be scripted or strict. And a lot of the time, if you begin to feel bogged down with journaling, especially if things are going great, then it might actually take productivity, energy, and time away from the things that you can be doing. So really what we should be aiming to live by is 80% implementation, right? An implementation rule, we'll call it, or taking action. And then 20% study rule. When I say study, this is like your journaling. So you're studying yourself here, right? But you should not be doing more than 20% of it. The rest should be just implementation in your day-to-day life. Because if you sit down and journal for a half an hour to an hour, but haven't actually taken action on anything, yes, you will have been given some answers, but when is it going to get implemented, right? You want to try and find the answers fast and build that skill over time to then take the quickest action possible, because it's only the action that actually cures anxiety. And if you end up getting paralyzed by the analytical info you come up with, yes, it can help you become more knowledgeable, but it may not add to the outcome that you want. Instead, it can actually almost feel like there is more added pressure, right? Like, right, I have got these answers now, but I am not sure what to do with it. And then the frustration sets in and you may begin to think, journaling is a waste of time. Or worse again, if you're thinking you have, all the answers, but you're not doing the work, then you decide to you decide to get frustrated with yourself even more and then fire yourself more into journaling. And then you get caught up in this vicious cycle of self-awareness where you're just constantly aware of everything, but you're not doing anything around it, right? And don't get me wrong, self-awareness can be a great thing, but it can also be a double-edged sword, right? Where you could become so self-aware that you may not know the difference between what's right and what's wrong. What can be tricky to deal with, or which can be tricky to deal with, I should say. But this is also where journaling can come in and help, right? So We do want to make it a bit more of an informal practice over time. We don't want to get bogged down by it. And we also want to build the skill formally a bit initially to give you insight and understanding, having certain questions laid out in a certain way as to what you need to do in the future and when it's needed. And if it does become a habit that you build and you love it, then keep it in. I know some people that, they journal every day, but for me personally, what's worked best is just once per week as a way of kind of reflecting. And I will usually do like bigger ones at the end of, at each quarter, and at the end of the year, I'll always do kind of a bigger reflection on the year that's gone and planning ahead as well, of course. And I journal within that as well. But when you first start journaling, it really is all about just getting your thoughts down on paper and realistically trying to figure out what is going on in your head, right? And it should almost be treated like you're confiding with a friend, someone you turn to just to try to make sense of whatever obstacle or challenge that's in front of you. So we're going to go through some 5 steps of some powerful reflection, okay? And we'll talk through these steps. I'll be giving you guys access to a document as well, which will help you reflect better and allow you to ask yourself better questions, okay? So step 1 is about clearing the space and setting the intention, right? So your journal should always be used to clear space and set the intention. What this means is, realistically, it's about getting an understanding of what it is you actually want to get from the journaling session. The intention is absolutely everything, guys, okay? You can be a person who has the intention of wanting to lose weight purely for status or looking great on an Instagram picture. Then you could have someone else who has the intention of not getting in great shape for status or attention or recognition, but instead doing it for outcomes which are far greater than that, and they have a far greater meaning to that person. For example, there are these are the same things when it comes to the metrics that you have to do to achieve that goal for, we'll say, one person who is just solely focused on the validation and acceptance of other people. These people become a lot more volatile and almost become depressed when they stop getting as many likes on Instagram, believe it or not, right? And when they end up adding a bit more body fat and no longer express the way that they look, and therefore they no longer feel worthy. Then on the flip side, the person that is doing it for the right reasons will not let this kind of stuff affect them, because it's not why they're actually doing it in the first place. They're doing it for themselves and no one else. They don't need that external gratification to feel happy. They have more emotionally driven reasons as to why it is important to them, and they can always level up to overcome hurdles that are in front of them. They will begin to see obstacles and problems just as a challenge then, in this case, okay? So setting the intention of what it is you want to get from the journaling is very important. And like, do you want a friend, or do you just want solutions? Or, do you want to figure out why things are going in a particular way? Do you want to figure out what it is maybe that you're missing or just not seeing? And what you have not tried yet maybe, or what is standing in your way that you may have not considered. But you can only try and do that when, you are clearing the space as well, and actually finding an environment that you can settle into and actually journal with a clear mind. So what you want to avoid is really doing this in noisy areas or around family, around friends, or other people, really anywhere that can cause distraction. So maybe you come back home after a long day's work, the house is a mess, and you won't be able to get into the zone for your journaling until the space is clear, right? So you want to find a physical and mental environment that will aid your journaling practice, that you can stay focused on the task, right? Now, from the research that has been done on stress, we know that a lot of people, and I think it's nearly close to the 90% mark, live in a sympathetic drive of the autonomic nervous system, okay? Which is a part of the nervous system that you cannot consciously control. This means that you can't just flick it on and off. It can't easily be turned on and off. You need to be able to relax and breathe and hit the switch. And breathing and breath work is one of the most underrated yet most beneficial forms of meditation. As some of you guys might have known from the seminar we did with Seamus Fox last summer, right? And it helps us reduce our blood pressure It helps us with our heart rate because our blood pressure is how quick the blood is moved around the heart. It can massively reduce our blood sugar levels as well. It can help our pancreas to actually release insulin, which helps drive the nutrients that are within our bloodstream, those carb-heavy sugars, to the appropriate areas, that be to your muscle and to your liver, to be stored as glycogen so that you can actually stay healthy. We don't want the glucose flowing around our blood system for too long, right? That's why insulin is released, to help us store it in the right places within our muscles and within our liver, okay? We want it to be used as glycogen for when we go training, when we're active. Then once you're able to adapt to that space and breathe appropriately and find yourself in a good environment physically with a clear headspace, then you're primed to actually start journaling, right? So just out of curiosity, guys, who here has tried to journal when not in the right headspace or environment? Now, I know some of you guys have mentioned you haven't started it yet, so obviously this is not TE, but anyone that has, like me personally, if I try to do it when there's people around, it's just not happening. If you try and do it like on an airplane, on a train, or wherever, it's never a good idea. It's best that you just have a quiet little space that you can go to and do it from there, okay? And if you have done it in an environment where, you haven't been in the right headspace because it's been too noisy or whatever, then obviously it's not the place to be doing it, right? So you learn from it and that space and environment needs to be right. So the root cause, right? This is really about finding out why you're feeling a certain way, figuring out what is causing you to feel triggered. And when we find the roots of it, that's usually where the pain and the attachment lies, but the branches are always going to be the trigger points, okay? So the roots are the emotional attachment to a particular situation or experience that you've been through, and the branches are the trigger points that emulate a similar experience in your now adult life. And most of the root causes will be deep to the point where you might not know particularly where they came from, but that is exactly where the journaling is designed to help with, okay? And it's finding out why you feel like you avoid things when potentially you are confronted with conflict. Maybe if someone raises their voice to you, you retreat, so then you try and figure out where that came from. Maybe it's if you build up an emotional attachment to weight loss and thinking that's the only thing you really need. Where did that come from? Was your family member always someone that struggled with weight? Perhaps maybe you yo-yoed up and down a lot previously. Maybe they talked about weight loss, your family member, and they placed their beliefs onto you. And is it maybe that it could be something to do with sports? Maybe you got dropped from a team when you were younger and you took it as maybe I'm not good enough. And then maybe now when you try to get a job promotion or you're interviewing for a new job, you automatically start to feel like I'm not good enough. So those branches are trigger points and they are not actually the truth, but the roots are so deeply ingrained to make you believe that about yourself because you have never done the appropriate work on the root cause. So it was never analyzed appropriately, which is something we'll dig into a little bit deeper and the questions we'll be asking ourselves, okay? So digging deeper is the next step. So we want to start getting under the surface and figuring out a bit more about ourselves, right? And to do this, to dig deeper, we need to write freely without filtering or censoring your thoughts. You need to use prompts or certain questions to guide your journaling in the initial stages. And then you need to continually ask yourself why. After you ask yourself a question, why did that come up? Why am I feeling this way when this happens, to explore really the underlying emotions and beliefs. Then we need to pay attention to and describe your emotions in detail, right? It needs to go into greater depth to find out where the root cause is. And then we need to create non-judgmental space for self-expression. Okay, we need to be willing to just put down whatever comes into our thoughts. And then what we need to do is reflect on past entries for reoccurring themes and see what's popping up frequently. What insights are we getting? And asking yourself why can one of the most powerful things that you can do. So when something happens that may trigger you, ask yourself, why am I feeling triggered by that? Or why did that hit a nerve? Or why did that speak to me at a deeper level? What's in that? By asking yourself why more. Figure that out, okay? Then you need to notice what you notice. Okay, that's step number 4. Then you will begin to notice and understand things that are coming up frequently, noticing what came up, what was it that you expected, where did that come from, and why have you not noticed it before? And does it now help you kind of make sense of certain situations upon reflection that you maybe acted in a particular way in that now makes you realize that from a deeper root cause you're more emotionally vulnerable in different situations and experiences. So let me know, guys. I just want to make sure, is this all making sense so far? Just before I move on to step 5, and I'll be breaking these steps down in more detail, but I just wanted to give you kind of the headings of those first, just so you can understand a little bit about the 5 different steps that we work through. Excellent, Nicole. All good so far. Aideen on the ball. Brilliant. Ashling and Mike. Perfect. So, step number 5. What now? All good, Jen. Good stuff. Where do you go from here? What needs to be your focus? What are you going to do about it, and what action steps are you going to take? And it might be taking what you have learned about yourself and going to someone you can confide with for advice so that they can help you get the answers that you're actually looking for, okay? So, let's dig into the steps a little bit deeper now. The first one was clear the space and intention setting, okay? So, what you need to do is check your environment, maybe do a little bit of breath work, take some deep breaths, box breaths, whichever ones you like to do. Notice where your mind goes, and then ask yourself maybe some of these questions, because what do I want to get from taking this time to reflect? Because you might think, it's a waste of time, which is just usually a story that you're telling yourself. What's occupying my mind? You may also be scared about, what you're going to come up with. What's draining your energy? You're going to have to take action on it, and you might not want to do that right now. So then you think, then is there a better option to actually avoid it? What do I find myself thinking about or talking to others about? This is something that's really good to reflect on, because what we conversation about most is we always say we're the average of the 5 people we spend most time with. But if we're having terrible conversations that are negative, it's going to create this negativity in our lives. So journaling about that can be important to figure out, right, I am being quite negative. Why am I being negative about this situation? What's causing me to do that? Why am I doing this? Now, that is exactly what we want to become more automatic with it, with this. Not avoid situations or thoughts that we may think may give us an emotional response. Okay, guys? Because it's often these things that can make us feel uncomfortable that if we, lean into it, it can often give us the highest levels of self-awareness and also the most amount of productivity when it comes to your transformation process, not only with your body, but also with your mind, right? Because it's not just about the physical, it's also about the mental as well. And this is because you begin to build up a degree of discipline and character as a person who now takes action on the tough things and that doesn't just wait around for things to be easy and avoid the real solutions to your problems because you're unwilling to face your fears. And nothing ever good comes away from, shying away from your fears. And I think we all know this deep down. All of you here, and even the people listening back to this, I can guarantee, have already achieved incredible things in your life. Every single time you have done that, you've leaned into fear. There's no doubt about it. And now what I want you to do now, guys, is just try and think back to yourself as a kid, as a 7-year-old or as an 8-year-old. Did you ever worry about the things that you worry about now? Because I know I never did, because you're fearless then, right? Because you don't have the info that you have now from going through life as a young teenager or as an adult to be fearful of situations. You dive right in and you explore. When you're a kid, that's why the older you get, the more difficult it is to explore, especially through journaling, because there's going to be things that can cause stress. When you're a kid, you just simply don't have fear, right? Think about when you played sports. you were fearless probably playing it, some of us anyway, and some of us even public speaking, right? You're getting up in front of your class, doing reading. But now if you were to do maybe something like this, you'd be very fearful of it. Then the question you need to ask yourself is, what happened from that age when you were fearless to now? Because those are the questions we want to find the answers to. Because very often the things that occupy our minds are things that we were void of as children. Because we were void of them, or because we were void of them as children, then we can really develop this kind of distinct nature of trying to chase something that we never had. And then we feel we always wanted, or that we feel we always wanted because of the things that went on around us that made us feel like we couldn't have it, right? So we really need to keep this in mind as well, guys. That's why we should think about doing that inner child work as well, because if you can take yourself back to being a kid again and doing something nostalgic that brought you a lot of peace and contentment and happiness when you were younger, and it's usually where you find confidence through the fun and through the nostalgia to have a much clearer mind on what you actually need to pursue. Because when you're young and you're exploring and having fun and doing things that give you joy, you only want to explore more because you want that freedom and happiness within yourself, right? But the fear now can stop us when we're adults. The fear of what can go wrong. The fear of thinking things might happen that might never happen. We're creating scenarios in our mind. We're worrying about things that haven't even happened yet and may never even happen, which is causing stress within our bodies. So we need to journal about this to overcome it, okay? And start living a little bit like a child again, right? I know that might sound funny to say, but it's good. Like I bet, like if any of us ever, like even me now, like for sports when I was younger, I was just absolutely sport mad, and then I went away from for a while. And then when I went back to it, it was like time stopped, you're just in that flow state. And like it doesn't have to be sports you did when you're younger. You can pick up new hobbies, new sports. It's just about finding something that gives you that kind of happiness within yourself again. The gym exactly can be something like this also, if the gym is something that gives you that kind of freedom and happiness and that feel good factor within yourself again, it's a very good thing. That could be replacing something that you did when you were younger, right? So the root cause analysis. So I'm going to go through these questions as well. These are very important to get that to get to the bottom of what is actually happening. So which emotions are most present in my day-to-day, right? It's very important that we actually get clear on what emotions are coming up, because it's very easy to just throw around the terminology of stress, right? But stress comes in so many different forms. Is it anxiety? Is it upset? Is it frustration? It might even be joy or excitement, and it might be overwhelm or underwhelm. Where does my mind wander to? There are so many different things as well, guys. Actually, just to go back to the first point about, before we move on to that one, about where which emotions are present in my day to day. Like there are so many different things that it could be, when it comes to your emotions. But once you can begin to identify your emotions, just like you would with your values, you can actually begin to understand them more at a greater level, okay? And when they crop up, then again and again, they keep cropping up because you understand better, right? Because you're journaling about this, you can begin to ask yourself, why? Why are these feelings coming up again and again? And what do they have in common that causes and provokes this emotional response? Now, where does my mind wander to? Let's move on to that one. So throughout the day, notice where your mind begins to wander. What triggers certain things to pop up at certain times? Number 3, what environments and activities are causing a strong emotional reaction in me? So think about the people you spend the most of the time with, right? The environment you work in, it could be. Think about where you sleep. Think about the gym that you maybe go to. All these are really appropriate because you spend time in these areas, these places. And if every time you go to the gym and you get a session in, but you're stressed afterwards because it's so busy and the equipment was crap, that could be a very good sign that you need to change the gym, right? So number 4, what's happening at the moment that I would like to be different? Number 5, what is stopping me? Number 5, how would I like it to be? Number 6 is, what's stopping me? All very relevant questions. And as I said, you don't have to go through every single one of these questions, guys. I'd like to pick generally 1 or 2 from the 5 steps. If I want to go a bit deeper into a problem, I might pick more, but 1 to 2 questions from each, okay? Number 7, what's helping me? So whatever you come up with, whatever your intention is in step 1, where you clear the space to set the intention, what is it you want to get from it? Okay? What's actually helping you in this situation? What is occupying your mind? Which emotions are most present in your day? If work is occupying your mind a lot, then maybe it's resentment, right? Maybe it's hatred or frustration, whatever might be going on in there. Where does your mind wander to instead when you are at work? Maybe it's not being there anymore. Maybe it's doing something more productive that is in more alignment with the things that you actually like. Which environments and activities are causing you a kind of a strong emotional reaction? It could be anything you do in work, or maybe it's even with people you work with, right? It could be in social situations. Maybe you drive up to the office, factory, or wherever it is that you work, and in the morning you sit for 10 minutes and you gather your thoughts. Maybe the dread sets in about going in there. Maybe that's not the case whatsoever. I'm just giving you some examples here, guys. Okay, that's stuff you can journal about on why you're feeling certain ways in certain situations. So, what's happening at the moment that I would like to be different? So identifying if it is your work environment, what would you like to be different? How would you like it to be? And what's actually stopping you from turning that into reality? It might be the hierarchy in work that it's difficult up there. Changes can be hard because maybe they're so set in their ways, right? But what's stopping you from going and looking at different job opportunities? Okay. With your given skill set, what is it that you really want to achieve? That's a big question to ask yourself. What is it you really want to achieve? So then ask yourself, what do you really want? Where does your mind wander to when you ask yourself this? Wherever it does wander to is usually kind of pushing you towards the route that maybe you should take. It's just about asking yourself what you really want, what you've always wanted to do. What's going on here that I might not be willing to see? A lot of the time that could be your behavior towards it. It could be that you're not a team player at work anymore at the moment because you're just sick of it, or you're not really giving it a chance. And, have you not maybe looked at having that conversation that you need to have with the people in charge, instead of assuming that the hierarchy might shoot it down, okay? So pushing for change is scary, guys, but staying in the same place can be even scarier. And that's a fact. What's getting in my way? What am I distracting myself from? What are you avoiding? Which of my values are being conflicted here? What am I going against that I actually truly value? One thing I recommend that you redo every year at least as well, guys, is just to revise your own values, because the person you were a year ago is not going to be the same person you are today. Now, if the person you are today is not the same as a year ago, then your values are going to be different, right? And when people say, oh, you've changed, you're different now, you might get these comments every now and again. Then what really has changed is your values, and you're just much more aligned with them. There could be new values you've developed, or maybe they have the values that you always had, and that's why you ended up in the position you're in before starting this process, because maybe you weren't aligned with them. And that's why maybe you got out of shape initially. But you value being in shape, so you wanted to do something about it, right? And it could be why, you never felt the best within yourself, and your energy was maybe poor, wasn't at a good standard. You might have been more lethargic, using foods for comfort and all of these different things. So every time you revise your values, you should keep them somewhere safe, like in your journal, at the back of your journal. You could put them on a sticky note somewhere just to refer back to, just to put them somewhere where you can see them, okay? Because when you were there, and you can simply just ask yourself the question, for example, if I value, right, autonomy and leadership, and I can't feel like I can lead this role appropriately because I don't feel like I have much of a say, then I need to seek out better leadership opportunities somewhere and I can show what I'm going to do, right? Just as another example. Also, guys, you won't always have the answers right away, okay? It just doesn't come to you like that once you journal once, okay? So it's almost like, think of it like this. I ate well today, but I have not dropped weight. Why is that? Well, you need to do it consistently to see your weight drop, right? Just like you need to ask yourself the questions more consistently to get the answers that you actually truly want. So you need to make sure you're in a better headspace and not feeling stressed or surrounded by the wrong kinds of people. Maybe you need just to take a few days off work or even get out and spend a bit more time in nature to allow yourself to find more clarity, okay? Which will allow you to think better because when your mind is stimulated, you can never really think as clearly. This is why finding the right opportunity for yourself to actually reflect on things is so important, as well as doing it in a quiet place, making sure your phone isn't on or it's on silent, you're not getting distracted. You're just able to think clearly. It's not being stimulated by something else. Very often as well, we can have this gut feeling of what we actually want, but perhaps we may not want to be truthful with ourselves about what that is. So has anyone ever been in this position before? Well, we have a really gut feeling of what we truly want, but we're just maybe afraid to push and go for it. We're not truthful with ourselves about it. We pretend like we don't want it, but we really do. Let me know in the chat, guys. Definitely, yeah. Cool. We've all been there. Me too. It's you just kind of keep putting a plaster over, but it keeps coming back because it's what we truly, truly want. Okay. 100% definitely we're getting, so a lot of you, this is hitting home, it's making sense, right? I'm really glad to see that. And this is what it's all about. Even talking through this now is like a form of journaling. I bet you're probably getting these light bulb moments, but imagine how powerful this is going to be when you get enough time to do this consistently and ask yourself these correct questions, okay? So where you may know what the right thing is to do, but you just don't want to do it because you're fearful of the outcome, right? We've all been there. It's like the angel and the devil on each shoulder, right? And one's telling you to do one thing, the other's telling you to do the other. One that's saying, "Oh, don't do that. You'll fail if you do that, or it won't work out well." And then the other person's like, "Yeah, you can go for it. You can do this." But it's about just overcoming them both and just going with the gut feeling, okay? So good to see this making sense so far, you guys, okay? Step 3, digging deeper, right? That's what we need to do, dig a little bit deeper when we get to these kind of root causes. So what is beyond the problem in front of you? So for example, you're avoiding taking action. So ask yourself, why am I avoiding it? Because the problem is in front of you isn't usually the problem, right? It's the reason you're avoiding the problem is what the problem actually is, because the problem is really just not getting solved then. So it's not the problem that's in front of you. It's basically what's stopping you from actually doing something about the problem. The reason you're avoiding it is the real problem, okay? I know that might sound a little bit confusing, but I hope it makes sense. What do I already know about this? So why is it I, get emotional in certain situations? What would make the biggest difference here? So what do I need to do to change this situation? Do I take action, or do I maybe seek help, advice, or support? Do I maybe figure it out a little bit more first by myself? If so, how do I do this? So number 4 here, how do I know this is to be true? So if you think you are incapable of achieving your goals, then how do you know this to be true? This is one of the best questions you can actually ask yourself. This one, guys, okay? So this is one question that can really help you get rid of that negative mindset, that negative outlook that you might have. And very quickly it can do it, because it is actually just an assumption on a few things that you've experienced before. It doesn't actually mean you can't achieve your goals. Yet, if you have an emotional trigger, right, and you will be able to find out the truth within that trigger. So how do I know that I think about myself as someone that can't achieve my goals? So how do I know there is truth in that? What truth is there? And what led me to believe that about myself? And it might be simply that your parents could have put you down when you were younger. You know, it could be some parents are actually like that, believe it or not. It could be maybe it was a teacher in school that used to always put you down. I had this happen to me personally, you know. To my in parent teacher meetings, I used to very rarely get a good report, right? Like I journaled about this, and you know, it doesn't mean that I can't achieve what I want to achieve, but I got to the root cause of it, right? Maybe you never had a great support system in place, or maybe you had a narcissistic partner at times, at some point in your life, maybe, you know, whatever it may be. Then who benefits from this, right? Who benefits from this? Because you certainly don't, your family might not. The person who benefits most is likely the person who doesn't even know that you are still suffering and the way that you actually are because of the root problem, okay? So where and how have I already made progress with this? So identify the action that you have already taken. What action have I taken here on this problem so far that you can find some confidence in? How often does this dominate my thoughts? How frequently are you thinking about this? How many more times can I mentally tolerate coming back to this place? And that answer sometimes might just be a little bit more. Maybe you have to do it a little bit more. You know, maybe you have to keep coming back to this place a bit more to find out more. And I've worked with people in the past, you know, that came on board to this program and said, I need to change now. That's it. I need to change now. But sometimes the problems that they haven't been yet squashed. And that's okay. Because sometimes you need to get to a place where you will no longer tolerate the way you are operating. Sometimes you'll be able to go back to it sometimes, but sometimes you need to wait till you get to that place to finally make a full 360, a full change, okay? And it might not happen straight away. You know, when you step foot inside this community, it could take you a month, it could take you a few months, it could take you a year, whatever it may be, right? You just need to figure out how long it will be. How many days, weeks, months am I willing to stay paused here? Give yourself an answer here that's actually truthful, right? Don't just write it down what you think you should write down, okay? You need to be very truthful with yourself, guys, when you're journaling. So important. Because otherwise you're just lying to yourself then, right? So you're talking to yourself essentially here. Might sound a little bit crazy, but that's what you're doing, right? If you're like I am, and you know you're not willing to sacrifice any more time feeling like this, then you can continue to do it. Then you continue to do it. Then you are now just not being honest with yourself, okay? So whose life am I living? Who are you trying to be? Were you brought up in a particular way where you know you thought not to quit, for example, when really winners only quit from something that they know is actually not going to serve them, and actually that's making things worse. There's this great saying that quitters never win and winners never quit, but winners will quit at the things that aren't serving them anymore, the right things. That's what a smart winner does, okay? So are you someone who is fiercely independent and doesn't like to let things go? Is that actually you? Or is that how you've been brought up? How you might have been taught to act, but it may not actually align with your values. This is why, you know, your values question is so great. How is this conflicting with my values? You know, it's so important to identify your values, guys. It can be such a powerful thing, okay? So notice what you notice. How do I consistently react when faced with emotions, situations, thoughts, decisions, environment? Are you always pretty emotionally fragile? Do you always get stressed out easily? Do you snap at people? Do you notice your impacts? How does this impact my behavior, my decisions, your relationships, progress? Notice your actions. What do I do after these situations? Do I build in time to reflect, or do I move past it and then repeat the cycle? Then when reflecting, remove the judgment and don't look at it through the lens of emotion, but more so look for the facts and what actually happened here, okay? Because when you're actually emotional, you're always going to be biased towards what you believe the situation to look like instead of actually looking for the facts. So ask yourself, what actually happened here? How often am I coming up against the same problem or stuck in the same environment and feeling these same emotions? For example, it can be just like when you're out of shape, okay, and you're becoming very snappy to the people who are around you because they do something that's maybe pretty irrelevant, and then you blame them for what they've done, when really it's you becoming agitated with yourself because your energy is low, you're feeling lethargic, you're not fueling yourself properly, or you're not looking after your mental state. So what actually happened? So what actually is happening is that because you're not taking ownership and responsibility, okay. But when you do that, everything can change. So what now? If there were no limits, what would I do? What's the ideal outcome here? If I knew I couldn't fail, what would I do? This is another amazing question, guys, to ask yourself. What action would you take if you knew failure wasn't an option? If it wasn't an issue? I bet you'd push yourself to do so much more. We all would. So why does this matter? So ask yourself, why does that outcome actually matter to you? If I got really committed to changing this, what would be possible? What's the first step? But also, what's stopping me? If I can't achieve the best, what one thing can I do to make it even just 1% better? 1% better every week. What do I need to forgive myself for? What do I need to give myself permission to do? What makes me happy that needs more space and attention? And finally, what next? Give yourself 3 actions that you can take to change, and ask yourself, how will I commit myself to do this? Now, the above 5 steps, guys, they're very, very effective for journaling, okay? To become more proficient at journaling. You don't need to ask yourself every single question from each section, but just choose 1 or 2, okay, from each and go from there. See what comes out. Trust me, it can be a real, real game changer. Okay? And a bonus step, guys, free flow. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. Sometimes you're not going to be sure what to journal about, okay? You just need to get the stuff out of your head, and you're feeling stressed, and there may be the feeling that there's, too much going on upstairs, right? Then you just free flow. Get a blank piece of paper or a pen, or as I said, if you prefer the Google document, and just write for 2 minutes straight. Write only where your mind goes. Don't stop and think about what you're going to write. Only write what comes to your mind for 2 minutes without stopping. Don't take a drink of water. Don't go on your phone. It's actually better, as I said, if your phone isn't even in the room or it's on airplane mode. Okay, this helps you access pure intention and makes clear the things that you're actually really struggling with. And even if you feel what you're writing down doesn't make sense, right, or it doesn't add up, it might even sound like gibberish when it's coming out, but very often what you can't make sense of in your head will come out on paper, and you can actually reread it to yourself and find out what actually is in there within that, what you actually need to place your attention to. Free flowing can be really beneficial, guys, but it is something that is very often overlooked because people want to get it perfect by asking themselves the perfect questions when that's not always realistic. So pause and just get a pen and then set a timer, boom, 2 minutes, away you go, okay? So let me know, guys, is everything making sense so far? We're nearly there. There's just a few final bits I just want to touch on, and that'll be that. Perfect, all making sense. Good stuff. So what I would say is, if you ever are faced with a life-altering decision, right, then it would be best to run through more than 1 or 2 of these questions, okay? it would be much more important to do that then. That would be the only case I would say that you might want to run through a lot more of it, okay? Just so if you wanted to go a little bit deeper to get all the data, all the info that you need to make an informed decision. Because on a regular day, 1 to 2 questions of whichever ones you feel you need is the way to go, or just some free flow. And that works perfectly fine. What you want to do at the beginning of a journaling journey is just explore more, just like we touched on earlier. As kids, we aren't afraid of failure. The same should be the case with journaling. Don't be afraid to pick and choose different questions to find out which ones are more suitable for you at any given time. So go through them, ask yourself which 1 or 2 questions is going to allow me to focus on my problems and tackle them head on. Which ones are going to give me the best answers and the best solutions to the problems in place. What I would say is the bigger the problem, then the more questions that are required, especially if you feel the height of the problem is quite large and that you don't know if you're coming or going, okay? And you're like, I don't actually know how to make a decision here because I don't have the answers. The more questions you then ask yourself, the more answers you will get. There might be days where you sit down and you ask yourself just 1 question, just 1, and you get the answer, right? It happens, not often, but it can happen, right? And that's it. It's about going off and just taking action then, guys, and implementing, because remember, as I touched on earlier, it should be 80% action, 20% study. So think of it like this. If you sat down for 2 hours of study, right? No one's going to journal for 2 hours, but I'm just giving you an example. And you get the answers you need, then that would take up to 18 to 20 hours of action, right? If you're looking at that 80-20 rule, okay? 18 to 20 hours of action to get your desired outcome. So think of it from that perspective. Journaling is really just a short-term tool to be able to facilitate the answers to solve greater and bigger problems, okay, in the real world. So let me know, is all this making sense, guys, what we've covered? I think we're good, okay? I think it seems to be hitting home with you, which I'm glad to hear, because I know this is a lot of information to take in. But I'll be giving you a document as well at the end of this, guys, just so you can have the 5 steps and all these questions in front of you, okay? The power of choice. So now something I found that has worked extremely well for me when it comes to journaling is the power of choice. And giving myself the power to choose how I want to feel on a given day or how I will act in certain situations. Because when you frame it like that and set the intention based upon reflecting about what you didn't like about yourself on a particular day, how would you like to go about a situation maybe a little bit differently? It means that you're setting the precedent that you have a different choice within a very similar situation that day or in the future if it were to arise again, so that you wouldn't feel so bad about the way you acted in afterwards, okay? And becoming the person that chooses to operate and think and behave as the better version of yourself, right? So regardless of if you know the answers or not, and there is one thing we can consistently say about choice is that humans, we actually never lose the power of choice, but sometimes we can forget we have it, okay? We can forget that we have a choice on what we are currently engaging in, how we are feeling, or giving attention to, or what we're talking like, or even the way we view the world, okay, and so on. We always have a choice. We can view it from different lenses, okay? The choice is always going to be yours. No one can ever take that away from you. Even if you get thrown into jail, right? You still have a choice of being happy or sad. Of course, you might be a bit sad initially, but then you can begin to turn that new. I've done quite a bit of research about people that have. There's this one guy who was in Auschwitz. I can't even pronounce it right. One of the concentration camps, Viktor Frankl, and he's like a stoic, and he speaks a lot about the power of choice. And he was in there the most miserable conditions, and he was still finding things he was grateful for and choosing to be happy, in the most horrendous diabolical situations. So he wasn't letting it get the better of him. There was people just giving up inside him. He didn't. He got through it. He made it through it, and it just shows the power of choice. And you always can choose. All those guys, we'll never lose that. Okay. Gratitude. Finally, okay. Last point. So the quality of being thankful, okay, and the readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness, okay? That's what gratitude really is. Jen says his book, The Search for Meaning, is really good and eye-opening. Yeah, exactly, Jen. It's an incredible read. Highly recommend it. With gratitude, right, there might not even be anything else that you want to journal about apart from being grateful for stuff, okay? As I said, I done this a while back for a number of months. I just used to choose the 3 things I was grateful for every day, and it had a really profound effect. Ask yourself, what are you grateful for that you might always take for granted? Here's one for you, right? Look at it like this, right? We've all been sick at some stage or other, right? And when we are sick, what do we wish we had? Or what should we be more grateful towards? What do we wish we had? Just when you think about it when we're sick, pop it into the chat. How do we wish we would feel, right? Good health, right? Yeah. Better. You just want to feel better whenever you're sick. So our health is right up there, right? Being able to do the things we usually do. We just want to be fit and healthy again. It could even be just getting outside, getting a bit of fresh air, getting out in the sun. Other things you might think to yourself, fuck's sake, I still need to get my steps in. I couldn't be bothered going outside now. It's rain and the weather's crap. But then just think to yourself, when you're sick, you wish you could go and do that. So don't take these simple things for granted. This is why journaling on this can be very powerful. The things you're grateful for. Getting your steps and being able to get out. Some people can't physically get up off the couch, or they might be confined to a wheelchair, So if you can be grateful about the really small things, it's such a powerful thing. And being in Ireland again, guys, it made me realise how many people give out about the weather. And I found myself doing it again sometimes, right? But then I was actually a bit grateful for the rain. Actually, was one of the things I was grateful for, believe it or not, back home. And it was probably because I'm getting away from crazy heat as well that helped me do that, because I was like one extreme to the other. But we can often build up the weather to be worse than it actually is. Like, yes, it is raining, but you can be grateful for that. You can still be grateful that you can just throw on some wet gear and you can get out and walk in the rain. And it can actually feel a bit refreshing, right? Some people don't even have the option to do that. And it's also like if you ever get injured, you can't make it to the gym, right? Then you might not have been, you might have not have been saying that previously. We'll say 4 weeks before that, you might have went once per week. But then when you get injured, you can't go at all. So be grateful for the times that you have the opportunities to go and make the most of it. Because injuries do happen. They happen to all of us. But we can always, bounce back from it. So show gratitude to these things daily that could get taken away from you. It's an easy, simple thing to do. Talk about the importance of I talk a lot about the importance of reducing screen time and condensing your time on socials, to stop comparison and protect your mental bandwidth. It's very important that we do that as well. So let me know, guys, has this been helpful? Do you think this will help you start your journaling journey? I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway in the chat section from this training. Covered quite a lot. I hope it's hit home and it's made sense to you. And as I said, there'll be a document going in, a Google Doc that you'll be able to download. I'll put it with this training when I upload it tomorrow in the comments. And let me know. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway. Sue says, I never thought I'd miss the gym. Yeah, like exactly. You've picked up an injury now. Hopefully you'll have a speedy recovery with it. But it makes you appreciate it so much more when you lose it. When you lose the chance to go and train, right? So it just shows how much of an effect it has on you. The feel good endorphins, the energy that it gives to you. So it's great that you're feeling like that. It's not great that you're injured, but it's great that you're missing it. Never thought I'd miss running, Jen. Yeah, when you got sick, it showed you again. You just wanted to firstly get better, and then you started to miss, the activity levels that were up to a very high standard that you had them. And remember, we can always bounce back from these things, though. But being grateful about it, journaling about it, asking yourself these better questions so that you can get better answers. is a very, very empowering thing, I should say. Jen, very helpful, great stuff. Nicole, I hadn't started because I never knew where to start, so definitely feel like I have the tools now to actually try it. Amazing. Mike and Ashling will definitely give it a go. Yeah, and as I said, guys, don't feel like it's something you need to do every single day. You know, when you print out the Google document, or you can keep it on your laptop, you don't even need to print it out. You can just journal on the Google document. You can input the date, input a question, and away you go. Or write it down on paper the old-fashioned way, whichever suits you best. I actually do a mix of both, depending on where I am. Sometimes I don't have, you know, usually I'll have access to my laptop, but sometimes I just like putting pen to paper still sometimes, okay? But a lot of the time I do it in a Google Doc. So yeah, I hope it's giving you the tools, guys, to get going with it. I hope everything has made sense. There's a lot in this training, a lot to take in, a lot to absorb, but hopefully it's giving you some light bulb moments. And yeah, really appreciate you guys coming along tonight and listening. And as I said, hopefully you found it beneficial. And as I say, guys, you know, the physical transformation that you guys go through in this journey it's just a vehicle for better things, you know, to improve the mind, to improve your emotional intelligence, you know. That's what training has done for me over the years, a better discipline, more resilient. It gives you so much more. People think people train just to look better. Of course, that's part and parcel of it, but it's what it does for the mental side of things. The clarity that it gives you is everything, you know. So that's it, guys. We'll leave it there. I won't ramble on any longer. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Tomorrow night, guys, whoever can make it, as I say, we're doing the meetup and Be Active Gym at 8 p.m. I hope to see you there. Whoever can make it, it'll be great. Have a rough idea of numbers. I think we might have around 10, maybe a little bit more. I know some people can't make it. They've let me know already. They're further up the country or out of the country, so understandable, of course. But for those of you who can make it, it'd be great to see you there. I know you'll get a lot out of it. We done one last December. The guys really enjoyed it. And it's an opportunity just to really improve your form, your technique, and just have a little bit more of a chat in person about all things health and fitness, okay? So that's it, guys. We'll leave it there. Thank you, Nicole. Excellent. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how it goes for you. And I've no doubt about it, you'll absolutely love it once you get stuck into it.